Hi, Annabeth. I'm going to take a look at your portfolio for college admission. I'll get started by talking about the entire portfolio as a group of pieces. Then I'll go through and I'll critique each piece individually. What I see in your portfolio is you have a lot of interest in mixed media and also in color. And both of those aspects are actually quite unusual for a student at the high school level. Most of the time when I see high school portfolios, people tend to separate media. They'll say, okay, this is the painting, this is the drawing, this is the sculpture. But you have a couple pieces where you're merging painting and collage, or you have a collage that's created out of many different elements. And you also have a couple pieces that are an accordion book or some other book format, which is merged together with drawing and also painting. And so that's very exciting to me that you are definitely showing a willingness to experiment and to play with your materials that I think is not as common at the high school level. You clearly are somebody who loves color. Now, the color is used in a lot of different ways. Most of the time you're using it in terms of this very bold graphic look. But you do have this portrait, image number 4, the portrait on the right-hand side, which is a much more layered approach to color in the context of drawing. I would really encourage you to feed off of your excitement for color. Because when I look at your charcoal drawings, images number 5, 6, and 7, I think it's clear looking at those drawings that you're not very excited about the material. So it could be that maybe working in black and white is not very exciting for you, and maybe a better way for you to develop your drawing skills would be to work by drawing in color. You also have this pen drawing, which is image number 11, and image number 12, which is this accordion book. And those two pieces as well don't really have the boldness and the enthusiasm that I see in some of the other pieces. Certainly in some of the color pieces, I think that there's a lot that could be improved in terms of the formal elements of the piece. But what I'm trying to get at is that it's very clear looking at your portfolio that you have some pieces that you are very passionate about, that you're really excited about, that maybe are lacking a little bit in the technical skills. But you also have a bunch of pieces in your portfolio that you just seem bored, like you're not very engaged with the materials, you're not really into the subject that much. And you really want to try to avoid that in your portfolio. You want to show in your portfolio that every single piece you're working on, that you are really excited about it. Because if you are bored in the process of making an art piece, it always shows. We can tell when you're bored. We can tell when you're apathetic towards the making of the piece. And it's also very obvious when you're really excited about what you're doing. So I would just make sure, whatever you end up doing, if you create new pieces for your portfolio, that you make sure that you yourself are genuinely excited about it, because we can definitely see that lack of enthusiasm or passion coming across in your portfolio pieces. Your compositional skills throughout the portfolio vary tremendously. Sometimes you have some portfolio pieces like image number 1, which are very chaotic and so busy that I find it very difficult to navigate the composition. It's hard to tell exactly what you want me to look at. You have a couple pieces that I think are pretty well balanced. For example, image number 9 is also very busy in terms of all the imagery and the collage making. But the thing is, the flatness and simplicity of that red background really balances nicely against the busyness of these records. So that's a piece where I think the composition actually balances itself very well. But you also have a couple other compositions where it's just really empty. Like image number 11, you spent so much time really investing all these little details into the pen work, and yet the background is completely blank. And so that piece to me tends to look very unfinished. So I would just make sure in your compositions that you're really thinking about the balance, and you're thinking about a way that you can direct the viewer to move throughout the page so that we really feel that there's a direction in the piece. Because in image number 1, I have no idea where to look. It's like every single part of the picture is screaming for my attention, and I just get very confused about where to look. So you want to think about yourself as a director, that you are showing the viewer where you want them to look, where's a place that the eye can rest, where's an area where it's a little bit busier. You want to really balance that a little bit better. I would say that your drawing skills need a lot of work. I can see that you have these 3 charcoal drawings, 2 of them images number 5 and number 6. These are both charcoal drawings which deal with linear perspective. And I would tell you that the linear perspective in these two pieces is really off. These are both 1-point perspective images. And the problem with linear perspective is that it's the one place in visual art where there is a right or a wrong. Linear perspective is either correct or it's not. And it's usually pretty obvious, like I can tell in image number 5, a lot of your vanishing lines are wrong. I think also in image number 6, a lot of the vanishing lines don't line up the way they're supposed to. I don't know if this was done for a class or even whether the teacher covered linear perspective. Linear perspective is not easy to learn for a lot of people. It takes almost an entire semester to really fully grasp. So if linear perspective is not something that you feel that you fully understand, I would just avoid it entirely unless you have a teacher there to really supervise and teach you all of the details of that. And so maybe instead of doing these space drawings, you could set up a still life, you could do self-portraits, you can work on landscapes if that's an option from life. I think it's great you're drawing from life. It's very clear image number 5, 6, and 7 are all drawn from direct observation. And so that's a really great quality. But the thing is, the drawings themselves, in addition to the linear perspective, they feel very unfinished. And I feel like a lot of the architectural elements tend to look a little bit wobbly. And that's one of the reasons why architecture is so difficult to draw, is because people really can tell when something is really off. So if architecture is not something you're excited about, find something that you are excited about. The other thing I would say about drawing is I think it'd be really exciting for you to work with color in the context of drawing, because actually one of the better drawings in your portfolio is image number 4, the portrait that's on the right-hand side. I think it's done in oil pastel. That one really shows to me excitement and passion. I don't see it as much in the oil painting on the left-hand side. I think largely part of that is that it was copied from a photograph, but the portrait on the right-hand side in oil pastel I think is quite exciting. So if you want to work in color, get oil pastels, you can get chalk pastels. Caran d'Ache crayons are really excellent. We do have a tutorial on artprof.org that shows you all of the techniques that you could do with Caran d'Ache crayon, but I think it'd be really fun for you to work with color media in drawing, because I can see in a lot of these you just seem a little bit bored and frustrated with the charcoal, and if that's not working for you, do something else. I think life drawings from classes are oftentimes problematic for students because pretty much all the time you never get the amount of time that you want to get with the model, obviously because you're in class. And for me, image number 7 isn't really strong enough to include in your portfolio. So a better option would be to do a self-portrait from a mirror, from charcoal or chalk pastel, whatever you want to work in, and that would probably be a much better solution for what you have. I would also say in terms of your graphic design pieces, one concern that I have across the board is that while it does seem like you are playing with different formats and font and placement, there's a common concern that a lot of these are just really difficult to read. And the thing about graphic design is it doesn't matter how exciting and how different your layout is if the poster is not readable. And I see that definitely in number 16. The contrast of those red letters against that very dark background makes the poster almost impossible to read. Same thing with the images in number 13, the one on the right, which has these letters that are on top of the grass. That one's also very difficult to read. So if you want to work on your graphic design pieces, you have to continually remind yourself, can somebody actually read this? Is this piece functional? That's a huge concern because sometimes people get so excited about being creative with graphic design that they lose the functionality of their poster. I would also say your 2 video pieces, images number 14 and 17, I would not include those because to me, they just look like you're playing with effects in different software programs. I don't know what program you use to build these 2 images, but they're odd pieces because they don't demonstrate any skills in animation, but they're also not live action pieces. And they just don't demonstrate for me enough familiarity with animation and/or film to really warrant a portfolio piece. I think that animation and live action film really, really difficult to pull off well. And unless you have a particular teacher who specializes in animation and film, it's really, really difficult to pull that off. And I think you're better off really focusing on your mixed media pieces and maybe even some of these book pieces, but I would definitely not include those two because I think they're just too weak. They just seem like somebody who's just playing around with the software. Another concern I have too is that the presentation of a lot of your pieces is quite confusing. For one thing, image number 8 and number 9 are of the same piece. And yet it seems like what you did is you took image number 8 and then you reoriented it so that it's tilted in image number 9, and then you added all these pieces. In my opinion, you don't need image number 8. Image number 9 is a lot better because it expands upon the idea. It feels much more like a composition. Image number 8, by comparison to image number 9, feels more like a fragment. So get rid of image number 8. You have a couple of videos where you show, for example, the gouache book, which is image number 10. And then you also have another video, which is of your sketchbook, which is image number 20. I really, really recommend that you not submit those pieces as videos and that instead you focus on getting some really excellent photographs of those pieces. Because again, the problem with video is unless you're very experienced and you really know how to show that work well throughout different shots and editing, the result usually is not very good. And so in my opinion, the videos that you're showing of the sketchbook and the gouache book, they really make the pieces look worse than they actually are. And if you got a really excellent 3D photograph of those, you would be a lot better off. And also you have a couple 3D pieces where you don't show the image in a space and it makes the image look really flat. Like number 12, which is this accordion book. I think it's really weird the way it's like cut out and then I guess it's photoshopped into the slide. And same thing with image number 18, where you just have this flat black background. Take a look at our section in the Art School Portfolios course that has recommendations for how to shoot 3D artwork. 3D artwork can be very difficult to shoot well, and it's not something that's impossible, but you definitely need to know a couple basic tips in order for the work to look a lot better. This piece, my concern about the use of the watercolor is that it's just very flat. And so the use of the collage is actually quite minimal. And I feel like what I would do with this piece is I would actually add way more collage. I feel looking at this piece that it's about 95% watercolor and just 5% collage. And so when I do see the collage, it almost seems like it shouldn't be there. It feels almost like an invasion into the piece. I also think the figure in the center is not very well painted, but it's also not distorted enough that it looks deliberate. And so when you're painting figures, you either have to get them more proportionally accurate or you have to distort them so much that we can tell that you're really doing something with that. I think that this pink floor that the figure is on looks like the craftsmanship was not very good. It's almost like you really have to decide in this piece, do you want to make it a flat graphic piece or do you want it to be a little bit more painterly? Right now it's neither. Some parts a little bit more painterly, some parts are not. The composition's all over the place. It's really busy, really difficult. I don't think this is your strongest piece, so I don't think this is a piece that's really worth working on more. You're probably better off doing a new piece instead. This piece, similar issues, except I think this piece is a little bit better because you do take the time to define the space a little bit better. For example, there's the corner here. You can see where the floor is, the bathtub. When I look at this piece, the perspective is so strange. Like the figure in the middle almost looks like she's floating. I don't believe that she's really seated on the floor. This one is a lot better, and also the clutter is a little bit more concentrated in particular areas. But same thing with the figure here. It seems like almost everything in this piece was totally drawn out of your head, and I really don't recommend that. I think it would be very helpful if you need to draw a figure like this, at the very least, find a reference photograph where you can carefully look at the way the hair falls, look at the anatomy of the hands a little bit more. It's really only those 3 charcoal pieces that I see where you're working from any kind of reference. And so really important that you do that. And I think this piece, again, maybe what you could do is remake it again, except this time with better observation in terms of the figure. This slide I'm actually really confused about. I'm not sure if this is a process piece or if these two are sketches. So this is an example of what I was talking about earlier, that the presentation really can make or break your piece. I'm guessing that maybe this is a painting you made and then you cut up the painting and then made a digital collage from it, but it's really confusing the way that it's put together. I also think that this being so close up, this almost looks like poor resolution on the piece. This tends to look a little bit better, but I think what you might try doing, if this is indeed a digital collage, maybe what you could do, print out the digital collage and then take acrylic paint and then paint over the digital collage. So that way it's a little bit more physical, because I think digital collage, it's something that a lot of people do very often and it so rarely looks good. I think most of the time it just looks like a mishmash of different things. I do respond a lot to the different colors, and I think compositionally this big image on the right is a lot better, but I think that you can go further with this. To me, this feels like the beginning of an idea. It seems like it hasn't been processed enough. And another thing I would say, when you are painting, it's a good idea to mix your own black. I am guessing, looking at this, that you're using black out of the tube. Black out of the tube tends to look really dull and really flat. And that's a concern that I see in a lot of your paintings, that your paintings do tend to have a flatness to them, which I don't think is working for you. It sort of messes with the space and makes the space more difficult to comprehend. These two portraits, there's two things going on. For one thing, I don't understand why they're both on the same slide. If you were to include these two portfolios, they really do need to be on two separate slides. And also, the cropping is not good. You've got a little bit of this sliver of yellow on the lower right-hand side of this oil painting portrait, and then this image on the right-hand side hasn't been cropped at all. We can still see that it's on an easel. And so this is where your presentation is huge, because admissions officers, they're really only glancing at each image for a few seconds. And so when you have poor presentation of your pieces, it really affects the way people judge your work. So I think that's a very important thing. You're going to need to spend a lot of time really cleaning everything up in your portfolio. The piece on the left-hand side, I don't think I would include, because I think it's blatantly obvious that it was copied from a photo, and it's not particularly well painted. I feel like the color is very straightforward. The face is pretty much all yellow tones. Looks like, again, you're using black out of the tube. Instead of doing black out of the tube, what I would try is mixing maybe alizarin crimson with Viridian, or you could mix burnt umber with ultramarine blue. You'll get something that looks like black, but is a lot more vibrant than the dead black, which comes right out of the tube. And so I would say you really should think about doing some self-portraits from life. It's easy to get a mirror, draw out of that. The image on the right, I happen to really like the strokes that you're using, but the thing is, the eyes and the lips, you get really tight, and so those two areas become very flat. So actually the nose, I think, is a lot more successful than the eyes and the lips, which look very outliney. It doesn't seem like you're really paying attention to the light and shadow the way you are on the rest of the piece. But I'd love to see you do some more oil pastel pieces. A couple self-portraits would be great. And also to get a lot more adventurous with your colors, because here, I think when you isolate the red to only the lips, it becomes very cliche. That's something you see all over the place, where you have an image that's maybe black and white, except the lips are red. You'll see that all over the place in movies and popular culture. And so if you could aim for something that's maybe a little bit more naturalistic, I think that would help you quite a bit. These two, again, I don't know why they're presented on the same slide, and also why there's this gigantic beige border around your pieces. I think what you need to do is spend a lot of time in Photoshop and just crop everything down, because the presentation's not helping you. I would not include the drawing on the left-hand side. That one seems like a very quick classroom exercise. It doesn't really say very much about your drawing skill. I'm suspecting that it's probably an exercise that was talked about in terms of the importance of negative space, but it's not really a fully realized drawing. The drawing on the right-hand side, I think what's working in it is it does have a good level of light and dark contrast. You have very bright highlights. You've got some really dark darks. You've got some good grays in between. But again, as I mentioned earlier, the linear perspective is really shaky. And so I don't really believe this space very well. And I also think it looks to me like you need some better charcoal tools. It would be really great if you could get a charcoal pencil. Also an eraser stick would be really good to have, because it seems to me like you're struggling in this piece to get more detail in the pieces. So if you can get in there and really refine, like for example, this stool at the bottom in the center seems like it needs a lot more attention, and also this stool over here that's further over to the left. Because this drawing, I think, if the linear perspective were correct, would be a good start, but it doesn't feel fully resolved. I think probably what you need in a lot of your drawings is just a much more refined, more detailed finish. If you don't have that, the drawing always feels a little bit unresolved. This one too, a lot of issues with the linear perspective, although I guess this is a little bit 2-point perspective. It's very, very, it's very mild. You don't really see the 2-point perspective that much, but I think spatially it's a little hard to know what to look at, because it seems like this figure in the foreground should be coming forward a lot more, and then this hallway in the distance really should be less articulate. So one rule that you can follow is that objects that are closer to the viewer in the foreground should be more detailed, and then the further back you get, things should get blurrier and less detailed. What I see in this drawing and also the last drawing is that you tend to treat all the different parts of your drawing to the same level of completion. And it's an awkward place because it's not really finished, but it's also not deliberately let blurry. So if you can pick, okay, well, this is the part of the drawing I really want to get detailed, I want to add a lot of refinements to, and then this is a part of the drawing where I can let go a little bit more, that will direct your audience a little bit better. These figure drawings, I don't think are strong enough to add in your portfolio. I think that the figures look a little bit muddled. The figure on the right-hand side, there's a lot of proportional issues, and also the anatomy is not really working very well, so I would get rid of these. I don't know if you did any gesture drawings during the summer program, but it could be that maybe if you have some stronger gesture drawings, those would be better to put in than this piece. Leave this out of the portfolio. Take image number 8, which is this one, out, and use this one instead. However, if you still have this piece and you have the ability to redirect some of these records, I think it would be worth playing with the composition, the placement of these vinyl records a little bit more, because you have this red rectangle, and then all the records are centered in the middle in this stream of records. And I think it'd be really fun if some of the records maybe were in the upper left-hand corner, maybe there were some in the lower right-hand corner. It's a little bit strange the way it just moves upwards from the lower left to the upper right. And if you maybe have some of them overlap, I think it's a little weird that these two in the middle are the only ones that overlap and the others don't. So if you have the opportunity, this is a strong enough piece that I think it'd be worth adjusting this composition to make it more lively, because the negative space that you have in the red background, it's not that exciting, and the distance between the records is all the same. If you play with the placement of these, that's going to help you a lot more. This piece, which you're presenting as a video, like I said, don't present it as a video, but I also think just as a book, it's pretty unfinished. Like, I look at this section of the gouache painting, this to me looks like it's about a quarter of the way there. What I would recommend, if you're willing to work on this piece some more, is to get either a Sharpie marker or some Micron pens and really try to clean up a lot of the gouache edges, because it's really difficult to make gouache look really clean and very neat without having some backup from a marker. And so this is a piece that I think could work really well for you, but I just don't think it's finished enough right now. It looks like it's only about halfway there. I also don't think that these blue threads are working for you. I know that they're there for practical reasons, that you need it there so that the book opens a certain way, but I just wonder if there's another way you could do that that looks like it matches the piece a little bit more. For example, what if you had a piece of paper instead that was cut like a rectangle, or not a rectangle. For example, what if you have a piece that's cut like a triangle and you have it straddling those two pieces instead of using the string? I think that might work a lot better for you. This piece, I think I would not use because it just feels really random. It seems like a technical exercise that you're doing. I mean, I happen to think the pine cone is drawn a lot better than the bird. The bird to me looks really flat. Sure, there's tons of details in there and you put in so much line work, but actually between the two of them, the pine cone has much stronger darks. It has bolder shadows, and I can really feel the three-dimensionality of the pine cone. So I think what I'd recommend is maybe you can do another pine cone drawing, but put it in a place. Put it so that maybe it's in an outdoor setting, or maybe it's sitting on a desk or something like that. Really important to place your objects in a context. When you have a bird and a pine cone just floating in the middle of white space, it looks very strange and unfinished. This piece, the presentation, I think is very strange. I'm guessing that these are shadows that you made in Photoshop. They're really weird. I mean, they're definitely not shadows that are created from an actual camera. What I would recommend is don't make a slide that's so busy. I don't think that you need all three of these elongated versions. I think at most I would do two, and then maybe one image of the piece all folded up. It doesn't make a lot of sense that you have one up here and one down here. It's almost like you're saying the same thing twice. And also, I don't think this is one of your best pieces. It's okay, but I think maybe you could work back into it or maybe even make a new one. I just think that there's so much white in this piece, especially the panels that have the letters. I think just makes the piece look very empty. For example, what if you reversed it so that instead of having a black E on a white background, you had a white E on a black background? I just think the presence of the white being in so high quantity is not helping you very much here. These three pieces, again, you really need to put them on separate slides. I can see looking at this that they're related to each other, but it's very confusing to have them all in one piece. I'm wondering if the piece on the left is the same as the piece on the right. I'm guessing it is, but it's very confusing. If this is indeed a cardboard structure that you created, I would try to put it in a place where you have a nice flat background. The white architecture that's behind the cardboard piece on the left-hand side, it makes it really hard for me to see the piece. And the fact that it's all full of shadow, it's just really dark. The photograph is just really not very good on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, I really lose the lettering where it says letter landscape. It's almost unreadable. And then having the white letters on top of the grass, also very difficult to read. Between these three, the one in the middle is the easiest to read. It's the most elegant as a design, but I also think just the black letters on the plain white background is pretty boring. So out of the three, the middle one works better, but still could use a lot of improvements. So I would really recommend within your graphic design pieces that you reevaluate how you use the white of the background, because it shouldn't feel like leftover background. It should feel like an actual part of the piece. All right, this piece I was mentioning earlier, I would just get rid of. And the brainstorming piece, I don't think this is great. I think instead you can submit a piece from your sketchbook. This piece too, there's a couple problems. First of all, I don't know why there's this big dark blue background around the piece. I don't think it's part of the graphic design piece, but it's really making it difficult for me to look at it. So again, this is something where you want to just crop out that blue background And here, I just think it's so busy and really difficult to read and very low in contrast. I think maybe if you have some different colors so that you don't limit all the text to only that red, maybe you include like a bright lime green or something like that. But either way, you got to really think about light and dark contrast here because it's making it very difficult to read. This piece I would get rid of, as I mentioned earlier. This photograph I find very difficult to look at. For one thing, I don't really know why it's the same picture 3 times. They all look the same. I'm guessing this is out of a sketchbook, but really the only image on this slide that you need is the one on the right. The one in the middle is a little bit strange because I see a little bit of somebody's finger, but it's not enough for me to tell what that is. The image on the left doesn't look like it has very good technique. And I also think this isn't really one of your best pieces. I'm guessing it's real clay on top of gouache, but I think the gouache painting is quite flat. It seems like the integration of the gouache with the clay could be better done. I would recommend that you take this piece out and maybe do another piece from your sketchbook. This balsa wood piece, good photography, good presentation, but I might recommend that you only show the piece on the left-hand side. I think the sculpture on the right-hand side is not as exciting as the one on the left, so just use the one on the left and use that as a single sculpture because I think it's going to look better. This sketchbook video, I think when I look at it, there was a page in here that I think you may want to include, and it's the one that has the most drawing. Here, we can see drawings from life on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, there's more drawings, there's some watercolor, there's some marker work and everything. I like this page because it really shows you drawing from life. Some of these other pages where you have watercolor or some marker work, and you also have a lot of collage, don't really show you drawing from life as much. You're playing with materials, but I think that's better shown in some of your other pieces. And so you can certainly do more work in your sketchbook, and if you have new pieces, you can certainly do that. But I think that one page that I pointed out that had the life drawings is probably the strongest out of all these sketchbook pages. Taking a look back at your entire portfolio, I would say that you definitely have potential here. I just think that you really need to work on the presentation of your portfolio, and you got to really dig into those drawing skills because drawings are so important in the portfolio, and it's really not an area you can get around. I don't think it's so much that you have too many graphic design pieces as much as it is that your graphic design pieces are struggling in terms of composition and light and dark contrast. So think about different ways that you can balance the functionality, the legibility of the poster against the actual look of the piece. And I would say in general, all of your pieces could use just more refinement. They need probably another few hours for them to really come to full completion. A lot of your pieces are close. It's like they're almost there. But I think for a lot of people, sometimes that extra hour or two really does make or break the piece. Like, for example, image number 10, which is of the gouache book that unfolds, there's some beautiful things going on in there. You have some really nice shapes. You've got some really beautiful colors that you've mixed together. But the thing is, the gouache technique feels very unresolved and really could use another pass of marker or with a micron pen or something like that. So really think about, okay, I've got this piece. Is there more I could do with it? And if the answer is remotely near yes, spend more time on it. That's something that I see across the board that a lot of high school students struggle with, is that people give up on their pieces too soon, or they stop working on it because they're worried that they're going to mess it up. But that is so rarely the case. I would say 99% of the time, when I ask a student to work on a piece longer, they get better results. Don't be afraid to do that. I think it's an important thing to just spend that extra hour or so and see where you can take it, because you have no idea until you try it. You won't know the potential behind your pieces until you actually take that opportunity to really bring the piece towards a full resolution.